For this lesson, we're working on the distributive property. What the distributive property is basically just passing out whatever's in front of the parentheses out to what is inside the parentheses. So see, this A is outside the parentheses. To pass it out, we're going to multiply it by the first term, and then we're going to multiply it by the second term. See, A times B is going to give me AB. A times C is going to give me the AC. So now that's all you got to do on these. If you're looking here, 7 times 6 gives me 7x. 7 times 4 is going to give me 28. So I've got 7x plus 28. How about if there's a negative sign out front, like number 3? Negative 4 times y is going to give you a negative 4y. Then if you take negative 4 times 3, you get a negative 12, or minus 12. So you got negative 4y minus 12. Now sometimes they try to trip you up a little bit, and they'll just put a negative sign out front. If you remember what I told you in the last lesson, if you just have a negative, remember there's a 1 right there. So that's really negative 1 times the terms inside. So look at it as negative 1 times y, which is a negative y, and negative 1 times a negative 9. Remember that sign goes with it. So that's a negative 1 times a negative 9, which is going to give you a positive 9. So you've got negative y plus 9. If it's easier for you to write the plus in a minus to do the keep change switch, you can do that, if that helps you realize that. The keep change switch, so that everything's addition. What about when you've got here another negative and you're multiplying by negatives? Remember, negative 4y times, negative 4 times a negative w is going to be a positive 4w. And a negative 4 times a, if you want to do the keep change switch, that's a negative 10. So negative 4 times a negative 10 is going to give me a positive 40. I think the hardest part people have is remembering to make sure your signs are correct with these. If it's easiest, I say just change everything to addition and then go from there. Like, let's look at number 9. Just change this to an addition problem, and we got plus a negative 4. So we've got negative 3 times 2x, which is going to give you a negative 6x. Then you've got your negative 3 times your negative 4, which is going to be a positive 12. So that's a plus 12. Sometimes there might be more than one variable, and that's okay. If you look at number 10, you got a 3 times an m, which is going to give you a 3m. Then you're going to take the 3 times the n, the second term. So first you did your 3 times your m, now we do 3 times n. So now we got plus 3n. But what happens if you have a variable outside the parentheses and you're multiplying it times another variable? Like number 12 here, we take d times c. Well, that's simply cd. Usually when we write our terms, we usually write them in alphabetical order. dc would technically be correct, but usually we'd write everything in alphabetical order. So CD. And then we have D times a negative 4, which is negative 4D. Number 13 looks a little tricky. We got lots of letters in here. An A, a B, and a C. So we're going to take 6A times B, your first term. So you got 6AB. Then you got 6a times 2c. That's just going to be, you're going to multiply the numbers. 6 times 2 is 12. Well, no other a, no other c, so you got 12ac. Let's look at some of the fractions, because fractions seem to scare everybody. But remember, you can always simplify, or you can use your calculator. But if you're looking at 1/4 of 8x Remember, that's the same as having 1/4 times 8. Remember, 8 over 1. You can cross simplify, and you end up with 2x. Then 1/4 times a negative 4 is going to be a negative 1. So you remember 1/4 times a negative 4. If you cross simplify, those becomes 1s, so it's just a negative 1. Let's try that on number 17 now, too. Number 17 here, we've got 1/6 times 3/5. Well, 1/6, I'll write it over here, times 3/5. I can cross that out and put a 2 there. Remember, 3 goes into 6 2 times, that's why we cross them out. And then you can just multiply straight across. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 5 is 10. So we're going to end up with 1/10 x. And then 18 times 1/6, well, 6 goes into 18 3 times, so that's going to be a 3 right there. I think we're getting the hang of the fractions. Let's go ahead and do this other fraction just to make sure. Okay, we've got negative, well, probably better change colors because you can't see that on the white. Negative 1/8 times 4/5. If you notice, 4 goes into 8 2 times, so I can cross that out and put a 2 there. So now it's as simple as it gets. So negative 1 times 1 is going to give me a negative 1 in the numerator. 2 times 5 is going to give me 10. That's going to be negative 1/10 x. Now, if I'm taking 1/8, negative 1/8, times a negative 24, remember, just put it over 1. 8 goes into 24. How many times? That's the 4 times. So we've got negative 1 times negative 4, which is a positive 4, over 1, or just positive 4. Or we could just simply write that as a positive 4, because it's 4 over 1. So now what happens when, after we multiply, we end up having to combine some terms? That might be a possibility too. Let's look at number 1. First, you're only going to distribute what's inside the parentheses. Don't go outside. So 8 times 2x is going to be 16x. 8 times a negative 3 is going to give me a negative 24. And now I don't distribute it to the 6x, that just stays in minus 6x. So then we're going to look at figuring out what's our like terms. We got a positive 16x and a minus 6x. So 16x minus 6x is going to give us a 10x, and then minus 24, because that's the only constant we have. If you look at number 2, we're actually going to end up distributing two different expressions. You're going to take the 9 times the 2k, which is going to give you an 18k, and then 9 times the minus 4, which is going to give you minus 36. Now you're going to distribute this negative 2, because notice it's got that out front. Like I said, if you get confused, always make it an addition problem. So we're going to pass that negative 2 out. So I've got negative 2 times 7k, which is going to give me negative 14k. And then negative 2 times negative 12, which is a positive 24. So when we're looking at combining like terms, we got an 18k, and we got a minus 14k. So that's going to leave us with just 4k. And then we've got a plus 36, minus 36 plus 24, which is going to leave us with 12. I'm going to do number 10 because, again, that's kind of that tricky one where it's got that minus sign out front. And remember, you can always change that to plus a -1 out front. So if you rewrote that, let me rewrite that. Plus a -1 that you're going to be distributing throughout the y minus 6. So when we end up distributing that, we're going to get 10 plus a -1y. -1 times a -6 is going to be a +6. And then a minus y. It doesn't get distributed. Looking at our like terms, we've got a minus y right here and a minus y right there, which is going to give me, I'm going to write it over here to the side, is a -2y. And then we've got a 10 plus 6, which is plus 16. Okay, we'll do one with a fraction, and then you can get started on your own. 9 to the 4th over 10 thirds. Let's see, let's simplify. 1, 3, 2, 5. So we've got 15 halves x minus, if you take 9/4 times 4, you're going to get a 9, minus 1/2 x plus 2. If you have any questions on how I got those, you're welcome to ask me any questions. 5/2 x minus a 1/2 x is going to give me 14/2 x. And then -9 plus 2 is going to give me a -7. Your assignment is on Clever. If you have any questions, please come see me. Make sure you show me your notes.